Madonna was reading bedtime stories to her children when she heard glass breaking downstairs. What she found in her living room was her worst nightmare, a man who had been obsessing over her for 15 years, and tonight he had finally gotten inside. What happened in the next 20 minutes would test every survival instinct she had. It was March 8, 2003, at Madonna's $12 million Beverly Hills mansion. She had just finished putting her daughter Lourdes and son Rocco to bed, reading them their favorite story about brave knights and protecting castles. The irony of that story would become clear very soon. Madonna's home was supposed to be impenetrable. High walls, electronic gates, motion sensors, and a 24/7 security team. She'd spent millions creating a fortress around her family because she knew the dangers that came with fame. But as she was closing Lourdes's bedroom door, she heard a sound that froze her blood, the unmistakable crash of breaking glass from somewhere downstairs. The man now inside Madonna's home was Robert Dewey Hoskins, a 38-year-old drifter who had been stalking her since 1988. His obsession had begun when he saw her Like a Prayer video and became convinced that Madonna was sending him personal messages through her music. Over 15 years, Hoskins had escalated from love letters to death threats. He'd been arrested multiple times for attempting to break into her previous homes, for threatening her at concerts, and for sending increasingly disturbing packages to her management company. In 1995, he'd been institutionalized after threatening to slice her throat from ear to ear if she didn't marry him. But he'd been released after serving only 2 years, and the restraining orders had done nothing to stop his obsession. Madonna's security team had briefed her extensively on Hoskins. They'd shown her police photos, warning her that he was considered extremely dangerous and potentially violent. But seeing his face in a file was very different from what she was about to experience. Madonna's first instinct was to call security, but when she reached for her bedside phone, the line was dead. Hoskins had cut the phone lines before breaking in, just as he'd planned during months of surveillance. She grabbed her cell phone, but before she could dial, she heard footsteps on the marble staircase. Heavy, deliberate steps of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Madonna's mind raced through her options. The children's rooms were down the hall from hers. The security panic button was in her walk-in closet. The nearest exit was the bedroom balcony, but that would mean leaving her children behind. As the footsteps got closer, Madonna made the decision that would save her family's lives. Instead of hiding or running, she stepped into the hallway to confront the intruder before he could reach the children's rooms. When Madonna saw Hoskins at the top of the stairs, she felt like she was looking at her own death. He was larger than she'd expected from the police photos, over 6 feet tall and heavily built. In his right hand, he carried a large kitchen knife he'd taken from her own kitchen. But what terrified her most was his eyes. They had the unfocused, manic look of someone completely detached from reality. This wasn't just an intruder. This was someone who had been living in a fantasy world where Madonna belonged to him. "Hello, Louise," using her birth name. "I've been waiting so long to finally be alone with you." Madonna forced herself to stay calm, remembering security training she'd received about dealing with unstable individuals. "Robert, you need to leave. The police are on their way." Hoskins smiled, a disturbing expression that made Madonna's skin crawl. "No, they're not. I cut the phone lines and jammed the cell towers in this area. We have all the time we need to talk." Madonna realized with horror that this wasn't a spontaneous break-in. Hoskins had planned every detail, studying her security systems and finding ways to neutralize them. When Madonna saw Hoskins at the top of the stairs, she felt like she was looking at her own death. He was larger than she'd expected from the police photos, over 6 feet tall and heavily built. In his right hand, he carried a large kitchen knife he'd taken from her own kitchen. But what terrified her most was his eyes. They had the unfocused, manic look of someone completely detached from reality. This wasn't just an intruder. This was someone who had been living in a fantasy world where Madonna belongs to him. "Hello, Louise," he said, using her birth name.
I've been waiting so long to finally be alone with you." Madonna forced herself to stay calm, remembering security training she'd received about dealing with unstable individuals. "Robert, you need to leave. The police are on their way." Hoskins smiled, a disturbing expression that made Madonna's skin crawl. "No, they're not. I cut the phone lines and jammed the cell towers in this area. We have all the time we need to talk." Madonna realized with horror that this wasn't a spontaneous break-in. Hoskins had planned every detail, studying her security systems and finding ways to neutralize them. "I know you've been trying to contact me through your songs, the messages in Ray of Light, the way you looked at the camera in your last video. You were talking to me, weren't you?" Madonna recognized the delusion that her security team had warned her about. Hoskins believed that her public performances were personal communications to him. Contradicting his delusion could trigger violence, but agreeing with it might encourage him. "Robert, I think you should sit down. You seem upset," she said, trying to move the conversation away from the children's rooms. "I'm not upset," he shouted, waving the knife. "I'm finally happy. We're finally together, just like you wanted, just like you've been telling me in your songs." Madonna heard a soft sound from Lourdes's room. Her daughter was awake and probably scared by the shouting. She needed to end this confrontation before the children became involved. "Robert, let's go downstairs to talk. The children are sleeping, and we don't want to wake them." But Hoskins' expression changed when she mentioned the children. "The children," he repeated, and Madonna saw something even more disturbing in his eyes. "They're not supposed to be here. They're not part of our life together."
Madonna realized with terror that Hoskins hadn't just planned to kidnap her. He'd planned to eliminate anyone he saw as an obstacle to their relationship. Her children were in immediate danger. "They're just visiting," she lied desperately. "Their father is picking them up tomorrow. It's just us after that." Hoskins seemed to consider this, but Madonna could see his grip tightening on the knife. His delusion was fracturing as reality intruded on his fantasy. What Hoskins didn't know was that Madonna's home had a backup security system that operated independently from the main network. Hidden cameras throughout the house were still recording, and a silent alarm had already been triggered when he broke the window. Madonna's head of security, Toni Morrison, was monitoring the cameras from the security office and had already called the police. But he could see on the monitors that Hoskins was armed and that Madonna and her children were in immediate danger. Morrison made the decision to enter the house himself rather than wait for police backup. He'd been a former Navy SEAL and had trained for exactly this type of scenario. Using his knowledge of the house's layout, Morrison began moving through the ground floor, trying to position himself between Hoskins and any escape route. As Madonna tried to keep Hoskins talking, his behavior became increasingly erratic. He began reciting lyrics from her songs, claiming they were messages she'd sent him over the years. "Remember when you sang, 'Justify My Love'?" he said, moving closer to her. "You were singing that to me. You knew I was listening." Madonna realized that every song, every public appearance, every interview had been filtered through Hoskins' obsession and transformed into personal communications. In his mind, she had been in a relationship with him for 15 years.
"Robert, I need you to understand something," Madonna said carefully. "I don't really know you. We've never met before tonight." This was the wrong thing to say. Hoskins's face contorted with rage. "Don't lie to me. You've been calling to me. You wanted me to come here." He raised the knife, and Madonna knew she was seconds away from being attacked. But instead of backing down, her maternal instincts kicked in with fierce intensity. When Hoskins lunged at her with the knife, Madonna didn't run. She fought back with the desperation of a mother protecting her children. She grabbed his wrist, trying to control the weapon, and used her dance training to stay balanced and mobile. Years of physical conditioning and martial arts classes that she'd taken for movie roles suddenly became survival skills.
"You're not taking my children!" she screamed, surprising Hoskins with the ferocity of her resistance. The struggle crashed into the hallway wall, knocking over a heavy bronze sculpture. The noise woke both children, and Madonna could hear them crying in their rooms. Toni Morrison heard the commotion and rushed upstairs. When he reached the second floor, he found Madonna and Hoskins fighting desperately in the hallway. Morrison had been trained for hostage rescue situations, but this was more complicated. Madonna was so entangled with the attacker that Morrison couldn't get a clear shot with his taser without risking hitting her. Instead, he used physical force, grabbing Hoskins from behind and applying a chokehold that quickly rendered the stalker unconscious. The knife clattered to the floor as Hoskins collapsed. Madonna immediately ran to her children's rooms, gathering them both and taking them to a secure area of the house, while Morrison restrained the unconscious intruder. When police arrived, they found Hoskins had been carrying detailed floor plans of Madonna's house, along with photographs of her children and information about their daily schedules. He had been planning this break-in for months. In his car, police found rope, duct tape, and additional weapons. It became clear that Hoskins hadn't just planned to confront Madonna, he'd planned to kidnap her and potentially harm her children. This could have been a multiple homicide, Detective Sarah Martinez told reporters later. Madonna's quick thinking and willingness to fight back probably saved her entire family. The investigation revealed how Hoskins had managed to breach Madonna's security. He had been working as a landscaper for a company that serviced several homes in her neighborhood, giving him access to study the area's security patterns. He'd also been receiving help from other stalkers online, sharing information about celebrity security systems and coordinating surveillance activities. Madonna's case exposed an entire network of celebrity stalkers who were helping each other. It wasn't just one obsessed individual, FBI agent Michael Chen explained. There was a whole community of people feeding each other's delusions and sharing tactical information. Hoskins was charged with breaking and entering, stalking, attempted kidnapping, and assault with a deadly weapon. But his defense team argued that he was mentally ill and not responsible for his actions. Madonna testified at the trial, describing the terror she'd felt when she realized her children were in danger. Her testimony was powerful and emotional, showing the jury the real impact of stalking on victims and their families. "I've dealt with obsessed fans before," she told the court, "but this was different. He wasn't just threatening me, he was planning to hurt my children. That's when I knew I had to fight back." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before finding Hoskins guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Madonna's experience led to major changes in celebrity security practices. She worked with security experts to develop new protocols for protecting high-profile families, particularly those with children. The incident also led to new laws about stalking and online harassment. The discovery that stalkers were coordinating their activities online resulted in increased monitoring of forums and websites where such planning took place. Madonna's case changed how we approach celebrity protection, said security expert Robert Hayes. It showed that traditional perimeter security isn't enough when dealing with people who spend months or years planning their approach. The break-in had lasting effects on Madonna and her family. The children required therapy to deal with the trauma, and Madonna became much more cautious about her public appearances and personal information. "It changed how I live," Madonna said in a later interview. "I realized that fame comes with dangers I never fully appreciated. When someone threatens your children, it puts everything into perspective."
She also became an advocate for stricter stalking laws and better mental health resources for people showing signs of dangerous obsession. Madonna invested heavily in new security technology, working with tech companies to develop systems specifically designed to detect and deter stalkers. Her home became a testing ground for advanced surveillance and threat detection systems.
The technologies developed for Madonna's security were later adopted by other celebrities and eventually became commercially available for wealthy individuals facing similar threats. Even with Hoskins in prison, Madonna continued to receive threats from other stalkers. The publicity around her case seemed to attract more disturbed individuals who saw her as a target. Her security team had to remain constantly vigilant, screening threats and investigating anyone who showed signs of dangerous obsession. The cost of maintaining this level of protection was enormous, but the alternative was unacceptable. Madonna's confrontation with Robert Hoskins became a landmark case in celebrity stalking prosecutions. The evidence collected during the investigation helped convict several other stalkers who had been part of the online network. The case also inspired other celebrities to be more proactive about their security and more willing to prosecute stalkers rather than simply trying to avoid them. Madonna showed that you can't just hide from these people, said victims' rights advocate Linda Thompson. Sometimes you have to fight back, both physically and legally. Madonna's decision to confront her stalker rather than hide probably saved her children's lives. Her willingness to fight back, both that night and in the legal system afterward, created protections that benefit all celebrities facing similar threats. The case proved that even the most famous and wealthy people are vulnerable to violence from obsessed individuals, but it also showed that with proper preparation and the courage to fight back, victims can protect themselves and their families. Today, when celebrities face stalking threats, they have legal tools and security resources that were developed as a direct result of Madonna's terrifying experience. Her 20 minutes of terror created decades of protection for others in similar situations. If this incredible story of survival and maternal courage moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand the real dangers that celebrities face and the importance of taking stalking threats seriously. Have you ever felt unsafe because of someone's unwanted attention? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories of courage in the face of danger.